Mather's bio. He is a true functional MD functional medicine practitioner. I know, kind of a rare bird in this country. And when I say functional medicine, I'm not just talking about dispensing bags of supplements instead of bags of drugs. He truly is a true functional medicine practitioner. And in my mind, the best functional medicine practitioners are not really, their thought is not so much how many pills we're going to give, but really focus on assessment. Why is the patient sick? What's going on? What's going on metabolically? To me, that's the real true functional medicine practitioner. And that really, to me, describes Dr. Mather in every sense of the word. Just to give a little bit of his background from his bio. He practices right now in New Orleans, graduated from the Tulane University School of Medicine and Tulane University School of Public Health in 2011, completed his residency in family practice in 2014. Private practice, he is passionate about delivering cost-effective and practical care with a focus on GI health, environmental toxicity, and preventive medicine. And I really want to emphasize why I like working with Dr. Mather. Functional medicine can get a little bit expensive for a lot of people, and I'm really impressed with Dr. Mather, not only focusing on efficacy, but cost-effective efficacy. There's a lot of ways to treat people, and but it's important ethically, and I'm in very high agreement with Dr. Mather. We have to find the most cost-effective ways of helping people. One of the things I also wanted to mention in terms of the fact that we are all focused these days on infectious disease, Dr. Mather has spent time outside the United States, really looking at some of the areas of the world where infectious disease has been an issue for years. And this is really one of his areas of true expertise, is infectious disease. Won't be talking about that tonight, but hopefully we can get Dr. Mather back in the future and talk about his work with infectious disease. As we know, really a big issue right now, not only COVID, long COVID, and so many other the emerging viral issues that we're seeing these days. Tonight, what you're going to hear, though, is Dr. Mather's work on thyroid issues, specifically talking about his work with Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroiditis from an assessment and a treatment perspective. So, Dr. Mather, thanks so much, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for the kind words, Jeff. I was just sitting here and just feeling grateful and humble. And I looked down at the clock and I couldn't believe that I've been doing functional medicine for 10 years and we've been working together for 10 years. And it just, time flies when you're having fun, I suppose. Yeah. And thank you everybody for being here. Thanks for National Nutrition Standard for inviting me and welcoming me here. I'm excited to give this presentation. I've been really jazzed about it. Ever since I got the opportunity to do it, because this is one of my absolute favorite case studies of all time. And the reason why I love this case so much is this was one of the first cases that taught me so much about functional medicine. And it was actually about 10 years ago where I saw this patient. So I love this case study because we can learn how stupid Dr. Mather was in his early days, and we can learn a lot from this. And so it'll be kind of fun. The first 10 slides are going through her case, step by step. What happened at each stage? What did the labs show? What did her symptoms do? What treatments did I try? And I know that not all of you are MDs, and I know that, but I know a lot of you have a deep background in nutrition, chiropractics, and I think that this presentation may be just as important, if not more important, for the chiropractors and general integrative practitioners, because at the core of this presentation is what I'm seeing a lot of allopathic MDs mess up and what we need help from everyone fixing. And I think that that's some of the over-management of thyroiditis from a hormonal standpoint. And so you'll see some of my opinions on that, and it'll be fun to go through things that work and things that don't work for Hashimoto's. So with that, let me jump in, and you can see at the bottom, I don't believe in burying the lead. And so that will be the kind of big picture message here. We don't want to get distracted by labs, nutrient replacements, or elimination diets. We want to focus on the gut. Okay, so KB was a wonderful woman to work with. I started taking care of her when I took charge of an internal medicine practice. And so although she was a patient in the practice, she was new to me. She came in and she was a woman of above average intelligence. She was doing a good job taking care of herself, right? So although she was kind of a stressed out attorney with some metabolic problems that you can see on the slide, she had a pretty good sleep. She was doing a good job of regularly exercise, and she had gone kind of the extra step of trying to lose some additional pounds that had come on after menopause. So you can see from medications, she's on thyroid. She was on a oral hormone replacement from her OBGYN and a variety of medications to help deal with mood, hot flashes, and some aches and pains. So overall, doing great when I first met her. And so I didn't have too much to say. I really wanted to do a general workup and check, particularly because she had a diagnosis of hypothyroidism. I wanted to check, did she have Hashimoto's? And order initial labs back. And indeed, she did have Hashimoto's. So one thing that I was able to do was give her a diagnosis. And I think this is also pretty important for patients who've been labeled hypothyroid to go and check, do they have elevated antibodies? Because you may treat them a bit differently, and as I'll argue, mostly with the gut. So when her initial labs came back, we see here that her hormone levels are pretty darn good. Her antibodies are mildly elevated, both the TPO, the thyroid peroxidase antibodies, and the thyroglobulin antibodies. These are the two antibodies that we use to track the status of autoimmunity in Hashimoto's. And so as autoimmunity goes up, the antibodies go up, and as autoimmunity comes down, the antibodies follow. Some of the things that I checked on KB, she did not have any evidence of viral activation. I checked Epstein-Barr. She had some minor issues with blood sugar and cholesterol. So with this information, I really didn't do too much different. I did tighten up the diet at this point and ask her to go gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, and sugar-free. And this was based on largely lectures that I had just come back from. I did the 5-day training from the Institute of Functional Medicine and came back with very eager and ready to help all the patients with autoimmunity that I was seeing. I knew I had a huge bunch in my practice, and elimination diet was on the top of everyone's recommendations for autoimmunity. And so I was quite eager to really offer this to my patients. Didn't make any changes to medications. I did add some basic supplements to her. I added a vitamin D, a fish oil, and a general probiotic. And she was a busy attorney, and we talked about stress management, some meditation, some ways that she can perhaps get better sleep. And I moved on. I didn't hear from her until a few months later, and she called the office letting us know that she really had taken a step backwards in her health. So she had a period of personal stress related to work and some travel that really upended her schedule. And as a result of that period, was feeling pretty terrible, right? So elevated blood pressure, headaches, she had heart palpitations, and just general fatigue. Indeed, her blood pressure was up in the office, and I'm thinking, okay, I think that she's had a flare of her Hashimoto's, and that explains most of her symptoms. And so I checked labs, and indeed, her TPO went up from about 300 to 556, and her free T3 bumped quite high to 4.9. Right, so I'm thinking that she's having a flare of Hashimoto's, and she's temporarily hyperthyroid. One of the things that can happen in Hashimoto's, most people think of this as a disease that only causes hypothyroidism, but the truth is that particularly early in the disease, you can have flares while the inflammation is actually causing the thyroid to produce excess hormones. So the excess hormones produced by the gland plus the supplemental thyroid hormone made her just run way too hot. So at this point, I say, okay, we've got autoimmunity, and I make some changes. I say, okay, we're going to tighten up the diet because you've slacked a bit on the diet, and what's doing the regular paleo has not really made enough of an impact, right? So I tighten up to autoimmune paleo. And I know different practitioners have almost different definitions of elimination diets. In my world, it's everything that we are restricting on a regular paleo diet, right? And in addition to this, we're going to pull off nightshade vegetables. We're going to pull off the spices made from nightshades, and we're going to eliminate the eggs, nuts or seeds, and particularly no alcohol. So we take a paleo diet and we take chunks of foods out of it that might be the most inflammatory. That's the theory. And I was pretty sure this was going to work. And then just from a conventional standpoint, she had too much thyroid. And so instead of giving her a combination T4 and T3, I said, why don't we give you just the synthetic T4? This patient had been on a combination Armour thyroid for many years, and she didn't know how she would feel on the regular Synthroid. So I thought we'd lower the dose and give less thyroid hormone overall. And in addition, I knew from the Institute of Functional Medicine and my reading that there were evidence-based nutrients and nutrient replacement therapy that we can use to support the health of the thyroid. And I was so confident because these are not just theoretical nutrients. There are clinical trials saying that these can really help. And so I was confident that this was all I was going to need to do. I give the right dose of medication, tighten up any of the dietary problems that were potentially contributing to this flare, give her thyroid support, and ride off to the sunset. And you will see I was very wrong. So I see her again for a follow-up. No better. She's feeling worse. So in addition to the symptoms that we previously went over, the palpitations, the headache, right? She's now more fatigued. And in retrospect, I took away all those calories, all those nutrients, right? She's undernourished. She's struggling with the diet, but she's a very compliant person. She's one of those patients that when she puts her mind to it, she does it, right? And I get labs, thyroid went in the wrong direction. So I'm thinking, what the heck? The Institute of Functional Medicine made it pretty clear that elimination diets and thyroid nutrient replacement was going to help. And here we are, the TSH went way up. But what's going on here? We got, now she's low in all her hormones. The TPO is still quite high. And I said, okay, we're gonna try a little different track. We're gonna add a bit more food back in. So I say, okay, let's give you eggs. Let's give you a glass of wine here and there. Maybe we can bring the stress down. Let's get you back on a combination T4, T3 nature thyroid, right? And again, I thought that this would be over soon and that I'd be kind of getting her back into a better place. So KB, she did everything I told her. And in retrospect, I learned so much for her, and I'm so grateful that she stuck with me because as you're about to see, she has many visits where I failed to help her. And it was mostly because I continued to try to play around with supplements, medication, and restrictive diets. So here's another visit where she's extremely compliant with everything I said to do, but no improvement whatsoever, right? Her new labs, her TPO is worse. Her hormonal balance is still off. It's better, but she's still having a huge amount of autoimmunity and it's creeping up. And so I say, okay, this is not working. Let's get some more foods back in. Let's try them one at a time, the standard reintroduction. This has not worked for you, Kathy. And so we're just going to add some food back in, get you some more nutrients and see how you do piece by piece. And in addition, I'm going to bump your thyroid dose. And let's take a little break from the supplements. Okay, so I want you to stop the extra magnesium, selenium, CoQ10, and L-carnitine. Despite good research, they're not working for you. And well, I do know about one other thing that might help. Inositol has some good research as a really helpful nutrient to calm the thyroid, calm autoimmunity. So we're going to add some inositol to you, and let's see how you do. No change. And so she says, I haven't felt well since before January. I'm wiped out. Now I'm having to take naps. In addition to sleeping at night, I'm barely getting through my day. I'm exhausted. I'm getting frustrated. And this is, you have to remember, maybe 6 months into my career as a functional medicine doctor. And I had a background in family practice. I'm quite used to treating the whole patient and really thinking about lifestyle and medications. And I had all these new supplements, all these new dietary tools that I was using in a variety of patients. So she wasn't my only patient that I was using these types of strategies in who had autoimmunity. And I really was not making progress. So I say, okay, I'm going to go back to conventional medicine a bit here. Your blood pressure is still high. You're having headaches. You're having palpitations. You're having lightheadedness. Let's use a beta blocker, a medicine called propranolol that can be really helpful for anxiety and blood pressure. Let's use it as needed and see if we can calm the function down. And let's get an ultrasound. Let's take a look at your thyroid. Again, 2 more visits, and to save you the pain of seeing me fail again and again, I'm going to combine visits 7 and 8 in one slide. So Kathy's not feeling any better, right? The propranolol didn't help at all. And on her own in this time period, she stopped a lot of the things I had asked her to do. She still had taken some of the supplements for a while, ended up backing down on the CoQ10, the carnitine, the selenium. She stopped the propranolol and continued to take some of the basic things that you saw on that first slide. Her labs were still a mess. A thyroid ultrasound came back with a pretty classic read for Hashimoto's. And I said, okay, well, we're going to go make yet another change to a thyroid medication to try to get you back to where you were. And the only other thing I can think about, Kathy, is gut health. You know, I've been seeing a lot of patients over the 6 months, and I'm seeing a lot of cases like yours that I'm chasing nutrients, I'm using a ton of supplements, I'm using aggressive diets, and we're not making much progress. So I said, but I've had a few patients where working on the gut has been helpful. So I'd like you to do a stool test, please. And so I asked her to do a stool test. I didn't hear from her for a little while. And in the meantime, I was doing some soul searching. Does this functional medicine stuff work? I had been doing just fine as a conventional doctor, but the reason I wanted to do integrative and functional medicine was that I didn't feel like I had all the tools. I could manage some disease, but people weren't healing. That's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see people resolve their disease. I wanted to see their symptoms go away. I wanted to see them shift into new perspectives, and I wasn't seeing any of that. Does this stuff work, right? So what had we done with KB? She was clearly worse off after 8 visits of work with me. This was many, many months. This was many hours of time that we had spent together. Hours of time on my end researching. We had done everything I knew to do on lifestyle. We had done a whole bunch of elimination from a dietary perspective. We had given buku thyroid nutrients. We'd given other supportive, helpful nutrients that can help people. And I had given her 3 different formulations of thyroid hormone at 6 different doses. Nothing worked, right? And so I was a little bit at my wit's end, and I was just saying, you know, this stool test is kind of my Hail Mary. Hopefully I can throw this pass down the field and maybe it will connect, because I'm about ready to give up here. 2 months. 2 months went by. She finally ended up doing the stool test. This is what we found. So this is a stool test that uses a variety of markers. So you'll see at the top culture. So the stool is samples of the stool are allowed to grow on agar plates, and we see what kind of bacteria grows. And you see on the red column that a dysbiotic species called Campylobacter was found, 2+ growth, and then a variety of 1+ yellow growth. That's the imbalanced flora. You'll see alpha hemolytic strep on almost everybody. But Citrobacter and Klebsiella on stool tests, now that I've seen hundreds of these stool tests in a variety of patients, are usually a sign of dysbiosis. It's usually a sign that the microbiome is off, right? That it needs a little bit of work and a little bit of love, a little bit of help. In addition, we saw yeast. So on microscopy, they saw candida, right? Yeast growth. And they also found it on the culture, I believe, 2 samples. There were no parasites, but this is a fairly standard stool test. And at the time I said, aha, this has to be it. So we are going to kind of forget the things that I did before, and we are going to go forward and treat the gut. That's what we did. And I asked her to follow a basic whole food diet. minimize the grains and dairy, but she does not need to eliminate anything. And I want her to start using some of the supplements I had learned that can help with the gut. So I gave her a lacto bifido probiotic blend. I had her take 1 capsule twice a day. I gave her the beneficial yeast Saccharomyces, 2 capsules daily. I used a gut healing formula. I'll show you a slide of some of the ingredients on the next page. And I used a partially hydrolyzed guar gum, a fiber that I was using at the time because it showed benefit in SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. This seemed to be a fiber that was well tolerated by even patients with problems in their gut. So I certainly didn't want to make her worse, but I wanted to kind of throw as much as I could at her to try to see could we shift her disease. And then finally, I wanted her to do herbal antimicrobials. So I used an herbal blend. Again, I'll show you the list of ingredients. And I combined that with oil of oregano, which is a really helpful tool that is particularly helpful with candida and yeast, right? So the order of operations, I said, do the diet and probiotics, give the GI, the gut healing formula, then start the herbal antimicrobials. And then after a month, I want to recheck your thyroid labs, and I'm praying to God that this would work. And this is what you'll see from a lacto-bifido blend. So you'll see usually a bunch of species of lactobacillus, and you'll see some bifidobacterium at the end. And then you'll see Saccharomyces boulardii there on the right. There are a variety of helpful products that look similar to this. And then these are examples of some products that can be useful in additional support. So you'll see the oil of oregano extract. You'll see the GI gut healing formula. In this case, I'm really a fan of, in retrospect, after doing this for a decade, I'm really a fan of the glutamine. I think that makes it a big deal, as well as the slippery elm and the marshmallow root powder. As my kids tell me, it's not marshmallow, it's marshmallow because it's spelled M-A-L-L-O-W. Very important pronunciation. And then finally, an example of the herbal antimicrobial blend is there on the right. So I think that generally speaking, when you're using herbal programs to treat dysbiosis, I think it makes sense to use broad spectrum. And so that's why I like agents like this that have a variety of products that have action on anaerobic bacteria, aerobic bacteria, yeast, potentially fungi. And so I'm a big fan of this type of procedure, even to this day. Okay, I talked to her on the phone. She was feeling better. So finally, for the first time, we get some success, right? She had turned the corner. She was feeling better, but she noticed that the oil of oregano was making her feel nauseous. It was too much for her. She was getting loose stools. She stopped that on her own and did much better after that. So I simply asked her to continue on with the herbal blend. She was using just a capsule or 2 a day, and I asked her to bump up to the treatment dose of 4 capsules and see me in a month. The next time I saw her was a visit that I will always remember. And we all have these cases, and this is probably the reason why I love this case so much. It taught me so much. And this is the sort of resolution and symptom reduction that you see when you treat the root cause. And she says, everything's fine. She has a sparkle in her eye. She was sitting up straight. She wasn't hunched. She'd clearly gained some good weight back on. She tells me her energy, 30% better. The GI symptoms that she really didn't make much mention of early in our first visit. But she says, oh yeah, by the way, all that constipation, diarrhea, bloating, and acid reflux is gone. Oh yeah, and I stopped taking that omeprazole, that acid-reducing medication. In retrospect, this is something I didn't do a good job of on our first visit. I didn't screen for GI symptoms, and cases like KB's has really taught me to really pay attention to GI symptoms early on, because that potentially may be a system that we can then pull a lever and treat to get good results for it. So blood pressure went down. So we see improvements throughout with the GI approach. And this is one of the big messages and take homes. And it's now a cornerstone of my functional medicine practice here in New Orleans, is really to start with the gut. And if confused, or if you're not sure what to do, also start with the gut. So one of the cool things is that she actually ignored my advice to take 4 capsules of the herbal blend. She was taking 1 or 2 a day. And instead of just doing it for a month and doing the labs, she did it for a longer period of time. So that taught me that low and slow over a period of time is perfectly acceptable. We don't need to blast and bazooka the dysbiosis in the small gut. And so I was quite happy to see that. And then finally, my conventional medicine doctor finally got a big smile when not only was she feeling better symptomatically, but her labs shifted in a big way. So energy, GI, her sleep, everything was getting better, and her labs responded in turn. We see this a lot in functional medicine, right? So when you get global symptom reduction, almost always you see autoimmunity, you see thyroid function work better, you see metabolic health improve. We saw the TPO drop in half to a quite reasonable 305, and we see all other indices of our thyroid hormone move dramatically in the right direction. And in case you want to say, all right, Dr. Joe, you got a one time, maybe her flare was done. Maybe this is a red herring. I put this chart there as counter argument because I started the gut program in August 2018. And I left out the years of misery where I was torturing her with a restricted diet and extra pills. But you see the TPO drop consistently, 700, 300, 200. You see the TSH drop from overheated 16, 7, 0.5, 0.04. You see the free T3 get up to a really healthy level and finally stay there. And I didn't want to bore you with other metabolic help and make this lecture all about lipids and triglycerides, but her triglycerides dropped in half, right? This is what healing looks like. This is what addressing root cause can do. She kept getting better, right? So she kept doing this. Another month later, she's exercising 5 times a week. She says her cognition has improved. The brain fog has gone away. She's working better and more productively as an attorney. Her hair is coming back. So she hadn't mentioned that she had experienced some thinning of the hair, but she said she's noticing areas of new growth, which is a big deal. The body doesn't like to invest in shiny, thick hair if it's feeling unwell, if it's feeling threatened, if it's having autoimmunity, or if it's having chronic inflammation in the gut. So we see hair growing back. And I'm practicing in New Orleans. So I've got maps in New Orleans here behind me. And king cake is a pretty big thing here around carnival season. And so she was able to have, a gluten, dairy, sugar bomb with some wine without problems. And this was a big win for her, right? And her mood's better. And so much so that we're able to pull down her antidepressant. She had been on venlafaxine, an SNRI antidepressant for years, right? So we were able to creep down on this antidepressant, right? So this was what I thought I was getting. And this was what I thought was going to happen initially with restrictive diets and a boatload of nutrient replacements. But finally, when targeting the gut, we get there in the end, we get the results, right? And one of the things that I found, kind of to my dismay, is that no matter what I said about really being able to open up the diet, she was very fearful. And one of the things that I've learned in my career is that restrictive diets can hurt people. And we have to be very careful how we approach the topic of elimination diets. She was feeling much better, but still there was fear around food. And when there's fear around food, that can last throughout the entire day, and that can really limit someone's healing. So that's the point of this slide. I've been in practice now for 10 years, and the lessons I learned in KB are things I see all the time. When Hashimoto's thyroiditis goes into remission, it's almost always when you treat the gut. And elimination diets have become more popular, more commonplace these days. There are blogs and podcasts and conferences, all sorts of literature out there about elimination diets. And as elimination diets have gone up, I see more and more people developing eating disorders, becoming fearful of food as a direct result of elimination diets. They may start with a simple gluten dairy, but then a practitioner may say, and you may want to pull histamines, high histamine foods. And oh yeah, by the way, you might need to pull oxalates, lectins, all sorts of compounds from the diet. And the diet gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And the patient gets more fearful. And in addition, there has been a predominant idea among integrative medicine that if you can just get that thyroid balance right, that the patient will heal. And I have never found that to be true. And I see a case like KB's regularly, where if you chase the numbers, you waste time. You simply spin your wheels, drawing blood, chasing medications, and you're missing the things that can really be shifted to heal a patient. I wanted to throw this study in here. I wanted it to be a little bit more than my opinion on elimination diets. So this is a really important study. They looked at 539 referrals to a specialty clinic, a neurogastroenterology clinic, of patients who came in who had chronic GI disease and they weren't really getting better. And so the doctors who had taken care of these people had tried a variety of things, including elimination diets. So what they found was that patients who were given an elimination diet had a 3 times increased risk of an eating disorder, of a restrictive eating disorder specifically. We've got the term orthorexia now. And I think this is on the rise. We live in a very fearful society. And I think just all the more reason to, when you give an elimination diet to a patient, you need to say, this is for a very small period of time. We're going to see if you feel better. If you do, great. But then we are going to work to expand your diet. There has to be an endpoint to the diet. Patients have to understand that it is a bridge to a more healthy, vibrant diet. You should be aiming towards the broadest possible diet that a patient can eat without developing symptoms. And that'll be different for everybody. And that's different based on what patients you see. Who comes into your clinic may be different than mine. But I just want to point out, elimination diets can hurt more people than help. I also want to talk just a moment about thyroid hormone suppressive therapy, because this is the other trend that's really going up, and it has to do with integrative doctors being taught from conferences and from clinicians who may not be prescribing medications. They're talking about this idea of thyroid optimization. And what they always leave out is the fact that aggressive thyroid hormone is not without cost. And this may be obvious, and I hope I'm not preaching to the choir. I'm so grateful for National Nutrition Standard for having me here, and I'm well aware that this is a group of chiropractors, but I think chiropractors in particular are going to see patients who may be more skeptical of this type of aggressive approach. And I think anything that we can do as healers and practitioners of all sorts to push back against harmful trends is absolutely needed. And so I want to leave at least the message that suppressive therapy, where you give thyroid hormone and suppress the TSH, right? If you drop it below the normal range, is a specific treatment that's indicated for thyroid cancer, okay? And specifically, not all thyroid cancer, a very small subset of very highly aggressive metastatic thyroid cancer are the only patients where this would be considered. It is not indicated in hypothyroidism. It's not indicated in Hashimoto's because it has not been proven to work and because there are a lot of harms, right? So on a weekly basis, I see someone come in with a low TSH because their practitioner wanted to treat their fatigue with thyroid hormones. And what I want people to know is that when you do this, it leads to an increased risk of atrial fibrillation, osteoporosis, fracture, and cardiovascular disease. These patients are often anxious, agitated, they have insomnia, and as a result, they're more fatigued, right? So if you see this, it's a great, great time to really give some knowledge to the patient and say, please ask your practitioner if this is a good idea, or if maybe you would feel better on a lower dose. It's a very appropriate way to manage this. I'm going to skip past the slide on subclinical hypothyroidism, as it may not be as pertinent to this lecture. And I want to kind of wrap up with the things we can learn. And I wanted to give this case report because we clinicians learn from cases, right? You can read as many studies as you want, but it's the cases where the rubber meets the road. And this case is one of many where I've seen Hashimoto shift by treating the gut. And many, many patients, when you treat the right area of the body, patients will improve. If they're saying, oh yeah, you gave me this and maybe it sort of might have helped if I kind of, yeah, maybe helped. It didn't, right? You should see 30% better and I'm growing hair and I can eat king cake and I'm sleeping better and my GI symptoms are gone. That's the sort of shift that you're looking for in functional medicine. Don't give up. right? We practitioners have a responsibility to work with our patients until they get better or they're sick with us, right? So thankfully, KB didn't get sick of me before I was able to help her. But don't give up. There is almost always a reason why someone is sick, and our patients are sick and they deserve someone who's diligent. I think I've said my piece on elimination diets. These days in my practice, it's a very extreme or rare case where I put someone on a strict elimination diet. It's my perspective that most patients, if you do the right things, do not need to be strict gluten-free, dairy-free. There are some patients who feel better and want to minimize it, but the percentage of patients who need to be absolutely gluten-free, dairy-free are small. And I think it's a much better balance to allow them to have these foods and tell them it's junk food. Tell them it's ice cream and pizza, right? You're going to eat those occasionally, but it's not going to be a standard staple of your diet. I think I've said enough on the importance of not chasing numbers around on a page. There is no optimal thyroid magical range that will get someone better. And I hurt KB by doing this. Countless vials of blood were stolen. Time, worry, stress, money, medications, wasted time, wasted trips to the pharmacy. This was harm done to a patient. And one of the things that I'd really like to see integrative and functional medicine practitioners do is find the simple treatments that start to heal their patients with less harm. And so that's one of the reasons I also love this case. If you treat the gut, metabolism will get better, right? Her triglycerides dropped significantly. She was able to wean off antidepressants. And the last thing I'll say is that in integrative and functional medicine in particular, you'll see a huge bias for wanting to use Armour thyroid, Nature thyroid, the combination of T4, T3 over the synthetic Synthroid. It's kind of how it's presented. But that's not always the right move. So some patients absolutely do feel better on those combination products, but some people like KB feel better on plain old Synthroid. So we want to be open and flexible for whatever our patients feel best on and not have a predisposed bias one way or the other. The last thing I'll leave you with is what I do now. In so many cases, if we treat the gut, things get better. And so this is a very basic standard gut protocol that can be used in a variety of situations. I use this in irritable bowel syndrome. I use this in inflammatory bowel syndrome, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. I'll use it in SIBO and SIFO. I'll use it in autoimmune disease of all kinds. I use it if there's advanced cases of toxicity, mold toxicity. I'll start with the gut and use a version of this protocol. And it's important to have them do it step by step so they can learn each step of the way what's helping and what's not. And as practitioners, we always want to lean into what's shifting them and helping them, and we want to back away from the things that are. So most people don't know what it feels like to not eat for 24 hours. And most patients with GI disease and autoimmunity feel a whole lot better. So I give them an optional fast if they're into it. Try it for 24 hours. You get unlimited coffee, bone broth, green tea, which I'm a huge fanatic for, right? And you get them unlimited fluids and just gently tell them they stop if they feel ill. And this can move a lot of patients' GI symptoms just in a good direction just by giving their gut a break. I'll put them on an appropriate diet. And I'll say that I use a low FODMAP diet a lot in the patients I see, patients who kind of come in after failing multiple practitioners. I go right to a FODMAP diet often, but there are a variety of healing diets, right? Maybe they just need to pull down on processed foods, right? I may have a lot of patients start that if they're on a standard American diet. Maybe they really need to shift over to a specifically whole foods, adding more variety of fruits and vegetables, right? Maybe they might need some elimination. They might need to cut down on the gluten, some of the allergens. I'll leave it to you as a practitioner to decide what diet is best, but you're having them do it as a trial. 1 to 2 weeks, are you feeling better or not? If you're clearly doing the diet but not feeling better, then you need to be open that maybe this is not the right fit, and we relax. And I think that's really important. Patients pick up our attitudes on diet, and we want to make sure we're leaving them in a healthier, better place. Probiotics. So I started KB on what I consider two classes of probiotics, a lacto-bifido blend and the beneficial yeast Saccharomyces. These days, after 10 years of experience, I almost always start people on three categories. So in addition to those really helpful categories, I want to add a soil-based blend. These are the bacillus species. Some people will call them spore probiotics. And I find what I like to do in my practice is start everybody on one capsule of each of those three blends and then work the way slowly up on the dose and let patients find the dose range where they feel the best. So there's specific suggestions of capsules, but the idea here is patients with advanced disease feel best on higher dose probiotics. And so many cases end at what is the right diet? Get on high dose probiotics. They're better, right? When simple things work, that's what we want to do. And so I give them the opportunity to get to that 2 capsules twice daily of each of the 3 types of probiotics. Get to that high range and see how they feel. Most patients feel better after some time there, but if it's too much, you just back it down. Let them listen to their gut and their intuition to find out what's right. So fast diet, probiotics, and I'm a fan of herbal antimicrobials. So many patients have SIBO. So many patients have candida, fungal overgrowth in the small intestines. So many people may not have outright SIBO where their breath test is high, but they're having bloating and irregular stools and pain, right? They may have just a plain old dysbiosis, right? Herbal blends work really well. These days, I use less oil of oregano and I lean more into a garlic extract. So components of garlic, allicin, are very helpful, are broad spectrum antimicrobials. They work for methanogens if you're someone who's treating a lot of SIBO. And I like to pair that with an herbal blend like the one that I showed you earlier. So similar to probiotics, I start at a low dose and work our way up. We don't want to really force the body. And so we don't want to force a die off or have a massive killing of, unhealthy bacteria. Patients will feel worse. And so, but when you go slow, and particularly if you do the herbals after the probiotics, die off I see is just extremely rare these days in my practice. So one of the big reasons diet, probiotics, then the herbals. So that's a basic gut protocol that if you're not familiar with treating the gut, I highly recommend you start with. And with that, let me just thank again National Nutrition Standard. It's an honor to give this talk, and I hope this is as helpful to you as it was enjoyable for me to give. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mather. Appreciate. Thank you so much for the kind comments. Really much appreciated. I wasn't expecting it, but thank you very much. That was
Well, you don't work
very
together
nice.
for 10 years if someone's.
I'm very humbled and a little bit embarrassed.
Oh, good. You deserve
it. Any case, let's see. Let's go to the chat here. And let's take a look at some questions here. First, if someone had Hashimoto's for several years and then is diagnosed with thyroid cancer, which results in thyroidectomy, do you still have Hashimoto's? Even though the thyroid antibodies are now below 1, should we still assume there is an underlying autoimmune problem?
Hey, Robin, I would. And simply because treating the autoimmune disease is going to look a lot like what I suspect most of you are doing in your practices anyways. And particularly with someone with a history of thyroid cancer, they need all the help they can get. And treating an autoimmune disease is the fundamentals of lifestyle that we all do so much in our practice: gut, sleep, stress, emotional health. And it's going to be looking for the reasons why people have autoimmune disease. And in my clinic, it's gut problems like Kathy. It's exposure to mold. And it's exposure to toxicants, particularly heavy metals. But I'm growing to suspect phthalates might be like a 4A, we'll see. Phthalates and plastic components. So big picture, you're looking to build their resiliency through lifestyle work, regardless of the autoimmune disease. You're looking to treat the gut, and then you're looking for toxins anyways. And so that's what I would do if this patient were in my clinic. The other thing is really important to say is that Hashimoto's will resolve spontaneously in about 30% of cases. So particularly if you catch it early and if you're treating it, if you hit it and you get lifestyle, about 30% will just go away, right? So we don't want to assume that once you have Hashimoto's, it's there forever. But in this case, I would, because this patient needs extra love and all the help she can get, or he. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Mather. Next, would you test for food intolerance at the start of the gut healing protocol? If so, when would you retest and potentially add foods back in? So we're talking about doing testing for food intolerances.
So this answer will get me kicked out of the functional medicine fan club, and if we were in person, people would throw things at me. I don't like food sensitivity testing. I don't think it works at all. I think it's inaccurate. I've tried lots of labs, and I think it leads to unnecessary anxiety. I think it leads to fear. It leads to unnecessary restriction, and the results are random. I mean, you do a food sensitivity test, and it comes back positive for like shark meat and Brazilian nuts, and they're like, I've never eaten a Brazil nut in my life, and so I just can't believe that the number of things that are positive are true. And so I don't do them, and I tell patients to rip them up, and we're going to ignore it because it makes us more anxious. We are going to focus on the things we can change. So I wouldn't order the testing, and I wouldn't retest it.
Thank you. Okay, next. How do you address the stress component of your patient's symptoms?
So I don't remember what I did with Kathy. I think that I asked her to use HeartMath, which is a really great HRV feedback tool that I love, love, love. Almost certainly I asked her to do that because I was doing that myself at the time. These days, HeartMath, I'll just list my favorites, I guess. HeartMath, if someone's kind of a tech forward person, and particularly if they're turned off by traditional meditation, HeartMath. If they are open to traditional meditation, then regular plain meditation. A lot of my patients have advanced toxicity, multiple chemical sensitivity, so I'll do the Gupta program. I love, love, love the herb ashwagandha, 500 milligrams before bed, and I'll leave it there. But those are the first that come to mind.
Thank you. Next, hi, Dr. Joe. I came in late. Did you test or would you recommend testing for iron in the KB case? Thank you.
Hello, Richard Draper. It's okay that you came in late. I don't think I did. I always do now. And so if I could go back 10 years in time, I would have. Ferritin, get a ferritin and an iron panel on every single patient. Almost every single patient as a general rule, because this is missed so often. I saw a patient last month who had seen Dr. Hyman, who had seen Dr. Afrin, and seen two other who's who of functional medicine, and they got esoteric treatment plans, and she had a ferritin of 7. She had been chronically fatigued for a decade. She had endometriosis. She had horrible periods for a decade, and she had been iron deficient for a decade. So I waved some FerroShell Select at her, and she felt better in 2 days. So yes, get iron. It's really important. Okay.
Here we go. Another question here. Is consuming supplemental iodine or seaweed okay with Hashimoto's?
It is okay. And I'm just not sure how important it is or if it works or not. I've had a couple patients who are on either carnivore or no processed foods take supplemental iodine, and they felt better on it. But I'm really on the fence whether iodine is needed. I don't, my intuition, my bias is that it's not needed, and that we just get enough iodine here in the US. So that's what I would say. It is okay. I wouldn't go crazy with it.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Another minute or so. In the meantime, while I'm waiting here, we have the email. If you'd like to get a video or subscribing to National Nutrition Standard, It's admin, ADMIN, at nationalnutritionstandard.org. Admin at nationalnutritionstandard.org. If you want to learn more about the organization, get videos, information, etc. Let's see. I think that's about it. Give it a second here or so. Any more questions, comments? Doesn't look like it. So, any case, Dr. Mather, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
This is really the first time that we've had to have an MD's perspective and really look at it from both the pharmaceutical and alternative medicine, functional medicine point of view. Very often in our world, we kind of get nutrients good, drugs bad, this kind of oppositional paradigm. And there's a place for both. And I really thank you for bringing that perspective to us, that we can really effectively use the best of both worlds. It has to be not heroes and villains. So I really appreciate
it. I'm so happy to speak here because so much of medicine is siloed unnecessarily. And the honest truth is that some of my patients get better care from their chiropractor than their board certified specialist MD, who is just coming at them from a really inappropriate perspective. And so I've seen that. I've learned more from chiropractors than any of my GI doctors on how to treat the gut. And I'm just honored to be here and just so happy to be able to share my opinions. So thank you all so much. I do clinical consults for Moss Nutrition. I love talking to doctors. I'm happy to informally go through any cases with you. I'm available to answer questions if you want to shoot me an email. So I'm here to help and wish you well. Thank you all so much. Go to bed. I know it's late over there.
Yes.